So I sat up and I looked over at him, and he was laying there with his arm and his leg hanging off the bed with a blank stare on his face. And I said, Mike, and he didn't look at me. I said, what's your name? There was nothing. I said, who am I? Nothing. And I called 911 because I knew the signs of a stroke, thank God. He was rushed to the hospital. His carotid arteries were plugged 100%, 170%. And some of the particles had gone into his brain. And he lost his speech, and he lost the use of the right side of his body. And you never know with a stroke victim how far they're going to come back.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. You do not, but maybe that's something you can bring up for the listeners, since today we're going to be talking about, I forgot because I'm old.
Aging with grace.
Did you like that little joke? Did you?
Sometimes, yeah. You're not old. Oh my
I had a baby once.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just figured, this is a topic that's been on your heart, and also, like, we are related. I did grow in your womb.
Yes.
39 years ago.
Yes.
And I aspire to be as hot as you when I'm 70 years old.
Yeah, this year was really special for me because with all the stuff that we're going to talk about, when I turned 70 on December 23rd.
Insert applause.
It was interesting because when I turned 40, it was yay. When I turned 50, it was, oh, my life is over. When I turned 60, it was like, okay. When I turned 70, it was like, huh?
Yeah, and just to throw in there for the listeners, now her daughter is going to turn 40.
Yeah.
Next year.
That decade can be some of the best years of your life in lots of ways. I'm really trying to reflect on how aging is changing. And it really is, because we have so many different ways to keep us alive and healthy. But just the fact of the number 70 and how I really don't relate to it, Yeah. And I feel like it's because I've retained my sense of wonder, and a lot of people don't. And I've retained my sense of being silly and being funny, and I'm still a little vain, but I don't really care that I've got some, I'm getting older, things are getting lower. I really wanted to read you something from my journal.
Yeah.
Because I've actually started documenting all the little things that happen as you get older. And it's sort of funny. But I also would love to talk about getting older with grace and living with illness in a partner, and how that just changes the whole fabric of not only his life, my life, but our whole family.
Yeah.
And how we have dealt with it or not dealt with it sometimes so well, but how we're learning as time goes by. because the last time I spoke with you on the podcast, I was 66. It was 4 years ago. A lot has gone on since then.
Yeah.
A lot
And
has happened.
if I may interrupt you really quick, this just clicked in my head. The last time I interviewed you 4 years ago was on Mother's Day. And we just had
Yes.
Mother's Day three days ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So happy anniversary. Happy podcast anniversary.
Podcast anniversary, Mother's Day anniversary. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same back at you. And I'm happy to be sitting here with you 4 years later with all the things that have happened with our family
With our
in that
sanity
last
still
4
intact.
years.
With our sanity still intact.
Oh yeah, with our sanity somewhat still intact.
Yeah.
And be able to sit here and smile and joke and all that stuff, because it has not been easy. You know, I always thought that life would get easier as I got older because I'd understand more. Yes, that's true to a certain extent, but then life has a way of popping up with new things that you have to deal with and learn. You're not ever done learning, you know? And I think that's another thing about aging. If you know that, if you know you don't know anything still, or you don't know everything, then you're much better off. If you think, okay, I'm there, then you're in trouble because life's going to throw bananas at you.
Yeah, that's really big in the personal development world, is like, you know, people start on this adventure. I call it an adventure of personal development. And at least I thought that it was, I'm going to personally develop and then I'm going to get to this place where I've been personally developed and it's a destination. And what's beautiful is two things. You realize personal development is forever. And as you're reaching to become the best version of yourself, you are the best version of yourself.
Yes, it's true. And those of us who've sort of kicked ourselves in the past about this and that and the other, sometimes we don't realize that. And we need to realize that every day. We need to reset and realize we're doing the best we can at the time with the information we have, and reflecting on our own experience, what we've learned, and building on that rather than trying not to make the same mistakes over and over and over again, you know? And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes we revert, and I certainly have a lot of times, but so what should I talk about first? Should I talk about the general aging stuff, or should I talk about our personal stuff for the last 4 years?
Well, I want to hear what you wrote in your journal, because you were, well, to you know, full transparency to the listener, I've already heard it and it's fucking hilarious. Sorry, Mom, I cussed.
And it's not done. I'm going to be adding to it.
Yeah. So
okay.
Let's do that. Okay.
So I'm going to be looking down a little bit. I called it Getting to Be Older, because a lot of people don't get to be older, you know?
Yeah.
They die young. And that's part of our journey in the last 4 years. We've known a few people who've died too young in my book, you know? So Getting to Be Older. Well, you may lose your pretty, but if you've lived well, your pretty shines boldly from the inside out. People start calling you ma'am before you're ready for it. But you've earned the respect of a ma'am, so relish in it. Things on your body start getting lower, so stand on your head more. You may not keep up on all the newest stuff, but you know so much stuff already that you can choose what to keep up with and what you don't need to keep up with. And all of that stuff you already know, you can share it with the younger ones. They may be pros at the new, flashy, techie stuff. The stuff like, you know, it'll clean your nostrils and tell you how many breaths you take per day stuff. But many of them are clueless about some of the valuable stuff that you do know. And they really need it. They being you, because you're young. You don't know it, but you are. So You can share what you know and let them make up their own minds about what's of value to them. And even if the younger ones think you don't know shit, it's important to share it anyway. When you get to be older, things may start growing on your body that you don't want there, like barnacles on an ancient stone. So cover them up, yank them off, or wear them proudly. You may lose hair where you want it, and you may grow hair where you really don't want it. So get some extra hair from somewhere, slap it on you if you want, and shave, pluck, and yank the other stuff, or wear it proudly. The years creep up on you, and then they begin to jog. And suddenly you look in the mirror and you don't know who that older person is, and others may treat you like someone you don't know, with kid gloves, or with disdain, or like you may just be a bit muddled. So just smile and let yourself shine through, shine brightly from your eyes, and tell them who you are. As I get to be older, I find myself wandering around sometimes, looking for my next gig, project, task, aha moment. I sometimes start projects, do the research, make binders for them, and then realize I really don't want to do that. I almost want to plan it and then have somebody else do it. Silly, huh? I love hanging around younger people, though, because so many people my age are old, and they talk about things like their latest ailments and doctor's appointments. And Mike is my husband, Mike and I have been through that and lived through that so much in the last 4 years. We don't want to have to talk about that. So that's as far as I've gotten. And there's lots more. But, people don't think about all the little things that are different as you get older. It's like, what the heck is that growing on my chin? Or, stuff like that.
Yeah. I actually had myself muted because I was laughing so hard I didn't want to interrupt.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, and, just reading that journal sort of tells you how I'm taking the whole thing of getting older. I don't have to change who I am or how I think. I don't have to sit down and knit if I don't want to. I don't have to
cut your hair off and
cut my hair and make it curly and wear polyester and say, "Oh dear," and hobble around and make old lady noises. Oh dear. Maybe I will someday, because maybe it'll happen naturally. And I certainly get up a little bit, slower lately. I'm not fighting age. I'm not fighting it. I'm trying to relish in it. I get to be older, and that's a privilege that a lot of people don't get. And at 70 years old, we don't know how many years we have. I was talking to Mike the other day and saying, well, I'm 70, so maybe I have 15, 20 years left if I'm lucky. But I don't think that I don't feel like I'm about to die, but you never know. Our bodies they do age, and it's interesting to watch, Yeah. It's if you could look at it that way rather than, oh my God, I've got this new wrinkle here, Yeah. It's a lot easier, I think. To say, if you can stay in the present, enjoy the day, which, we strive to do, and sometimes we can't, but,
Just on that topic of we never know, when I was interviewing Megan, her second interview where I sat with her during her chemo treatment, one of my questions to her was, what is it like knowing you're going to die? And she looked at me and said something along the lines of, you could get hit by a truck on your way home today. None of us know.
Yeah.
Whether you're old or young, nobody knows how long we're going to live.
And Megan died well. I know she had her tough moments, but boy, she lived till the last moment in her 33 years.
Yeah.
And it was a testament to the idea of living while dying,
Yeah.
Um,
For the listeners, I'll post her episodes in the show notes so you can click on it and listen if you want to listen. The first episode, she was in remission and cancer free. And the second episode, the doctors told her it was all over her body and she had like months to live.
yeah. So that's part of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And including the fact that her mother, my good friend Robin, also passed away of liver cancer. And our family and extended family lost about 14, 15 people during the last 4 years, and none to COVID. My mother, your grandmother, who I talked about in the last podcast, she passed away at 94. So it was a pleasant, wonderful, okay death. But then Megan, 33, not so pleasant to us,
Yeah.
I mean, not that death is pleasant, but it doesn't have to be horrific. But man, we had suicides, we had people dying of strokes, we had people dying of cancer, we had of all ages.
Yeah.
And in the
And then
meantime,
on top of that, I think we were just going to say the same thing. In the meantime, your husband was like seemingly having all of those things and not dying.
And not dying.
Yeah. And for some context, another episode I can refer them to is I actually interviewed him, and I don't know what episode it is now, but I'll post that one too. But we were about to find out whether or not he had lung cancer. And I say that smiling because the lung cancer thing seems like it was so long ago compared to everything else he's been through in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you speak on that and take a drink of my diet.
Oh my goodness.
Dr.
So
Pepper
I actually made myself notes because so in the last 4 years, as you just said, in addition to all of the deaths, not COVID, but while the pandemic was going on, certainly, which also changed the dynamic of everyone's family and everyone's lives. Yeah. My own husband started to have health problems, and sometimes I don't even know where to start. He had prostate cancer. He had a major neck surgery. He did end up having lung cancer, which was caused by a perineoplastic condition. Perineoplastic meaning cancer caused, which was an autoimmune disease that was very rare. He had the cancer removed. He had the prostate removed. He beat cancer, but then he was facing this autoimmune condition that it was a neuromuscular condition that caused his body to, the nerves were not going to the muscles and giving them energy like they should throughout the day. And it would cause he would slur, he couldn't walk right. His eyes would droop.
People thought he was drunk.
And people would think he was drunk. Yeah. And he's running a business, a major business, and he's the spokesperson. So there was a lot of, oh my goodness, what do we do? What is this? It took us a long time to finally get it diagnosed, just after we spoke the last time. And at the time, only about 68 people in the world had this autoimmune disease, which is similar to myasthenia gravis. Look it up. So after he'd gone through prostate cancer, gone through the neck surgery, gone through lung cancer, been diagnosed with this condition, been put on medication for it, he had a bit of a good time. He was walking with a cane. He was doing okay. And suddenly he went into a flare-up with the autoimmune disease. And this was right in the first summer in 2020, I believe. 2020. I get the dates mixed up. Anyways.
I just know we couldn't go into the room.
We couldn't go into the room, and he literally couldn't even open his eyes. His muscles were like frozen up. And I couldn't get answers from doctors because they wouldn't let me in and they wouldn't call me. So I didn't know what was going on. And it was summertime, and I would go up to his window and have him get on his cell phone and talk to him. And a lot of times he wouldn't talk back because he just couldn't. He was stuck in his body. It was horrific. And during that time, Megan passed away. And I remember going to her celebration of life with you and your brother, and coming back to the hospital and pounding on the door and having your brother be the spokesman for us and say, we need information. We need to know what's going on with my husband, with my stepfather, with my,
Yeah.
Thank God the doctor that was on board that day came out and said, well, he's having a flare up. In these flare ups, this and this happens. And we said, nobody told me that. So when COVID hit, a lot of communication shut down, and it was horrific. It was devastating to the families that were outside the hospital trying to get information about their loved ones inside the hospital. She told us what it was, and he slowly came back. Then he came home. Now, we had been a really active couple for our, the time, 20 years, 22, whatever it was. And suddenly he couldn't walk yet. He was talking by that time, but he couldn't walk. And we had to bring him home as a very ill person. And I had a lot of new things to learn, like, how do you care for someone who can't get up and go to the bathroom? How do you clean them? How do you move them when they can't move themselves? Yeah. What type of equipment do you need? What type of supplies do you need? Who do you need to be? I'm an educator and an actor, and I didn't know that shit. I didn't know how to do that stuff. And I felt like I was failing him. I remember that. And finally somebody said, why don't you get a caregiver? And I thought to myself, no, I need to be able to take care of him. And so it was a fight with myself until I was so exhausted and so frustrated and so beat down by not knowing what I was doing, but learning at the same time that I finally got a caregiver. Thank God. We had the funds to get a caregiver. A lot of people don't. And your insurance does not cover that. They'll cover in-home nursing care once a week, something like that. But we had a 5-day-a-week caregiver. And I learned through her, a lot of things about how to sit them up, how to, the fact that I needed to get a different bed that sat up it by itself, that I needed to get a walker, a wheelchair, all these things, which adult diapers to get, because he was, and the poor guy, my husband is an engineer and an inventor and designer of audio equipment. He's always been gregarious and brash and fun. And he was none of that after that. However, I want to skip ahead a little bit. He relearned. He learned how to walk again. He became his old self again. He wasn't quite as, gregarious and up, but he ended up within the year walking with a cane and driving and going to work and doing all the stuff that he did. And we were living a fairly normal life. We were going to trade shows. We were doing plays. He also directed shows, and I was either in them or I was helping or whatever. And I thought, okay, we're back to normal. except for all the pandemic stuff, we all started coming out. I feel like we were opening our doors and going out into the sun, blinking and looking around and going, oh, the world is still here. Oh, we can go to our families' houses. We can go to the market. Wow. So all that was happening. And we did a show in January of 2022. It was called Fuddy Mears by David Lindsay Bear. He's a fabulous playwright, and he writes very quirky plays about the human condition, basically. And Mike really wanted to direct that show, and he wanted me to play the mother in the show. Her name was Gertie, and she had just survived a stroke. And she was functional, but she could not talk right. So she talked like this, and she got her point across and everything, but she couldn't talk. But so as an actress, I had to learn how to talk like somebody who'd had a stroke, which is different for everyone,
Right.
And it was just coming out of the pandemic, so it wasn't, the audiences weren't big, but it was we had a beautiful cast, and it was a great show. And every theater production that I do, I learned something, but that one really had a lot of messages in it. And I tell you about that because he was back. Yes, he was walking with a cane, but fully able to direct a show, go back to work, all of that. And then in July of that year, July 1st, after all the losses, the deaths, the illnesses, the coming back, it's like clawing your way back to some sort of normalcy. He had a major stroke. And that morning, his alarm went off, and I said, Mike, stop your alarm, it's going off. So we stopped it, and it went off again. And I said, Mike, your alarm's going off again. And I was a little bit grouchy because I was half asleep. He didn't stop it. So I sat up and I looked over at him, and he was laying there with his arm and his leg hanging off the bed with a blank stare on his face. And I said, Mike, and he didn't look at me. I said, what's your name? There was nothing. I said, who am I? Nothing. And I called 911 because I knew the signs of a stroke, thank God. He was rushed to the hospital. His carotid arteries were plugged 100%, 170%. And some of the particles had gone into his brain. And he lost his speech, and he lost the use of the right side of his body. And you never know with a stroke victim how far they're going to come back. But I have to stop and tell you, my initial thought was, again? Again? I can't go through this again. How am I going to do this? What if he dies? How am I going to survive and go through this whole bringing him back again? It was very selfish when you think about it. That's, I would think that way. And then I would think, how selfish is that? And at that point, everything changed for me and for our family, because we weren't sure how far he was going to come back. His partner would come to the hospital like every other day and sit with him, and he couldn't talk to us. We didn't know if he could understand us. He couldn't feed himself. And after a couple of weeks, we had him transferred to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and because of his autoimmune condition, to have surgery, they had to be careful because he could go into another one of those, I call it a freeze, where he just, anesthesia was not a good idea. So they had to be very careful with that. But they cleared out the one carotid artery, and they left the other one because it was too dangerous to try to clear it out. But people can live with one carotid artery clear. Anyways, so total of about 6 weeks in one hospital or another, and then into rehab. By that time, he was eating mostly sort of by himself. He could start using his right hand. The right leg was moving. He was making words. I can't tell you what a slow process. You know what a slow process this is, because you were there. But for your ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you what a slow process this is. And I'm afraid I wasn't doing very well with the whole thing. You know, at least I had information and knowledge about how to care for someone at home. They kept saying they'd wanted to put him into a home, and I just wasn't going for it because I had experience with that with my two parents in different ways, and I just wasn't going to have that. I knew he wouldn't get better in a home. So we brought him home, and we got a good caregiver, and we started that march back to helping him become the best he could after a stroke. So this is where it gets sort of dicey. As he came back, I realized his personality had changed a bit. As he started to talk, which he did, his talking came back slowly, but he couldn't get words out very quick at first. And he had been a speaker for the company. You know, that gregarious, brash personality couldn't come out, and it really frustrated him. And he started taking it out on me and on our caregiver and on maybe anybody else who happened to be around. And we didn't like it. And we didn't understand that it was frustration. And in some ways, he couldn't help it, you know. And from doing some research, I realized that a lot of stroke victims, their personalities change totally and they become assholes, excuse me. But so we've been working on that ever since. And what happens to the partner of someone who is chronically ill, the partner being myself, you become a caregiver instead of a partner. You have to find ways to stay that partner and not become the caregiver only, because otherwise that's what you'll stay. And I realized that, and thus we hired the caregiver right away. I became scared to leave him. After all the things that we'd been through, I wasn't leaving the house. You know.
Quick shout out to Shannon, by the way.
Yes, big shout out to Shannon.
Big shout out to Shannon. She's been there since he couldn't talk and walk. Yeah. And she's still with him.
Yeah, 2 years later.
Yeah.
And it's just a difficult thing to be in the middle of. And if the people around the person who is ill doesn't put on their big boy or big girl pants and go, okay, wait a minute. And we're still working on it. You know, they say that a year after a stroke, you're pretty much where you're going to be. That's about as much, but might continue to improve. And certainly we had physical therapists come in, and at first occupational therapists, and he's been working really hard. And in addition to that, these caregiver people, who includes myself and Shannon, we had to take care of ourselves. I started going to counseling, and I chose a grief counselor because with all of the things going on, with the deaths in our family and the illnesses of my husband, I realized that I hadn't given myself time to grieve for all of these things. And I was in a state of grief about what was going on with Mike. And also, I was in a state of needing to adjust and accept the new way that we were in our marriage.
Yeah.
till death do you part. There's a big reason why that's in those traditional lines in a wedding, because it's not easy, And when we get older, I don't know about you, but when I thought about getting older, I thought about Mike and I, riding off into the sunset and traveling around and blah, 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 and doing all these fun things. And yet we've done a lot of that good stuff,
Yeah.
and we're starting to do it again in a different way, with the scooter attached to the back of our car, hauling a wheelchair, but we're still going to do it. But it took a long time to adjust and accept and know that I still had to take care of myself in order to be any good to him or you or anybody else.
Yeah.
That was a process. Allowing myself to get out of the house was a process.
Magic Mountain.
Going to Magic Mountain is great, but there were a few times when I would go to Magic Mountain with my daughter, and we'd get a call. Oh, he's going back to the hospital again because this or that is happening.
He had a heart attack.
Oh no! I try to forget about that. I know that sounds awful, but it was a minor heart attack, and that was after everything else. So. He bounced right back from that, which sounds strange, but he did. So it's been a learning experience in addition to learning how to take care of and be with, and, just the mechanics of knowing that you're living with a chronically ill person, and it may change a little bit and they might get a little better, which he's leaps and bounds now. He's having conversations. He's back, he's back at work as a consultant, but he's 75 years old.
Yeah. And he's cussing again.
And he's what?
He's cussing again.
Yes, he's cussing again. So we know it's got to be better.
Yeah.
But we have our moments where I look at him and I say, don't say that type of thing to me. You're disrespecting me. And I never used to have to say that. And he'll stop and he'll apologize, but he doesn't realize it. And so we've had major talks about, helping him think before he speaks. Don't try to just blurt it out. It's the brain disconnects and reconnects, and when it reconnects sort of differently.
Yeah.
And his speech is slower now. He has to really think about it, but he doesn't slur. He doesn't talk funny like Gertie did in that show.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my husband is a fighter, and he's not a survivor. He's a prevailer. And I really admire him for that. But, along the way, there were some major, major changes in how we deal with each other in our marriage. And now, at the end of the day, when we lay in bed and we hold hands and watch our favorite murder show, detective murder show, I always say, put on the murder shows. It calms me down. It helps me sleep. And he looks at me, but he understands. Anyways, so to all those people out there who might be listening, don't ever give up. Just keep growing. I mean, that's part of the getting older. You have to keep growing. You have to be open to change, be teachable. You have to know that as you get older, grief is going to happen. Illness is going to happen, and you have to be ready for it. It's like you really, I feel like I've turned into a warrior, Yeah. And I've got my big guns out, and I'm ready for anything now. And along the way, we can still have joy. We can still have a lot of fun. I can still go to my daughter's house and take walks and laugh through the whole thing. And Mike is starting to laugh again, too. And right now, as of right now, my feet are on the ground. I'm talking to you with your wonderful show. And I'm staying right here in the present. And that's where I try to stay. So that's my message. Growing older is a privilege. it's an adventure. You don't have to get old.
Yeah.
You can choose to get to grow older and use your experience and the skill sets that you've learned in your life to make it that great adventure that it can be. So,
Yeah. I want to touch on the laughter part because, like it's there's this exercise that we do with me and my coaches, and it's called If You Really Knew Me, You Would Know. And I always start with, if you really knew me, you would know that my favorite thing in the whole world to do is laugh. And if you really knew me, you would know that my second favorite thing in the whole world is to make other people laugh. And like, it sounds like a surface level, like, oh, cool, laughter, haha. But I think that for this family, I think us being able to laugh has kept us alive for these last 5 years.
Yeah.
Honestly. And so yesterday, for the listeners, I had a big graduation yesterday, and
Yeah.
two people commented on them laughing around me. And I was like, yes. And like, that wasn't just to be funny. That's like a win for me when I can make people laugh.
It is, and you can, and that's part of your expertise in being a master neurological transformational coach. Yes.
Master neurotransformational results coach. Woo!
Thank
I'm
you.
Master Kate.
And one thing that in some ways you've taught me is that you can laugh and heal at the same time.
You can laugh and heal, and I've done this before where I'm laughing and crying at the same time, but not crying from laughing so hard. I'm like feeling the pain and laughing at the same time. It's like, it's honestly, other than sleep, like that whole saying, laughter's the best medicine. It's the fucking best medicine.
Yes.
And I cussed again, Mom. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I only cuss when really necessary.
That's a lie.
Like that. Well, I really don't fucking mean to cuss. I mean, they have laughing clubs in Japan because the Japanese tend to be very, I don't know, I see them as very straightforward, business-like people, but they know the importance of laughter, and they actually have laughing clubs where they, I don't know, tell funny stories and jokes, and they all laugh, which is, something we all need to do more of.
Yeah.
And just like last Sunday at my daughter's house, who happens to be you, we were telling riddles and telling kid jokes to each other and laughing, which is your son was taking part of that, my wonderful grandson. And that's just healing. It's healing. Yeah. It reminds us that life tends to go on, and we can choose to be miserable, or we can change our minds and choose to be at least content, or bring joy into our own lives. Nobody's going to do it for us sometimes. And I think we choose that laughter a lot. Sometimes to people's chagrin, they go, they're laughing about this. I mean, just like I talk about the murder shows, oh, that's going to put me to sleep. So those of you who are getting older, who is all of us,
we're older than we've ever been.
If you can hear what we're saying, and listen and put it into your own lives, when death hits in your lives as you get older, or illness of your partner or someone you love dearly, you can live through it, and you can live through it with, it'll be okay. I guess that's the message, And I wanted to talk about one other thing, if I can touch on it, and that's the Myra King story.
Oh yeah, I was gonna tell them that this is gonna be a 2-part episode because there's another story that she wants to tell and that I've never told before publicly.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So I'm not sure how to bring this up. We have many stories in our family lives that may not have happened to other people, that people don't think will ever happen to them. And one of them is the story of Myra King, who was an employee of mine years ago, 30-something years ago, and a dance teacher, and just a beautiful, well-loved woman. She was my friend, and she also worked for me, and she had 200 children who loved her.
I was one of them. She was my dance teacher and Megan's dance teacher. We took dance class together with Myra. Yeah.
And she didn't show up to work one day, and that was unlike her. And we immediately called the police because we knew that something was very wrong. I'm not going to get into it other than the fact that she was never found again. And we're now dealing with keeping the person who killed her, because she was murdered, keeping the person who killed her in prison. There's a probation,
Parole.
oh, they call it
Parole hearing.
Parole hearing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Coming up next week, and I've talked to a lot of other, especially women, who've been affected by this person, and I will not mention names at this point, but I would like to come back and tell that entire story about what it's like to lose someone who goes missing and is never found, and the fact that it never goes away, and that it can come back years later, and you have to be ready, because certain people should not be out in public. So that's all I'm going to say about that. That can be a whole.
Tune in next week. I'm going to do your episodes back to back. I did that with another guest.
Yeah.
We had a 2-part episode, and so that's what we're going to do with you.
Okay.
So listeners, tune in next week. And yeah.
All right. So, but this time around, it really did take the entire time talking about the aging thing and dealing with illness thing. And life is multifaceted, and
yeah,
to be up for the game, Well,
I do have a question for you, which your answer most likely has changed because I've interviewed people 2 weeks apart and their answer changes. But if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
Okay, I'm going to ask for 2 things again, because I did last time.
Oh, go for it.
So the first one I said last time: be kind, you guys. Be kind. Be kind to the people you love. Be kind to the people you live with, even if you don't love them. Forgive. The forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It's a biggie. A lot of people don't realize that. And there's a third one. Be a humanist. Try to step into the other people's shoes and see what might be going on with them that's making them act that way. It doesn't excuse the way they act, but it may help you. Be kind. And that's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rosemary Moffat signing off. Until next time.